Hello and welcome to another political dialogue program. This week we have very important guest from Denmark, political analyst Jino Victoria Doabi. Dear Jino, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jino. As you follow the Rojava developments very closely, as a first question, I would like to ask that despite the ongoing peace process in Turkey, it is clear that the Turkey and related extremist groups such as HTS, they are still threatening the Rojava and SDF forces. Turkey uses its political powers and trying to benefiting via these relations with the HTS and Jolani against the Kurds on Rojava. So how do you see that developments and how does the situation can be stabilized in the region, first of all?
Well, you're absolutely right that Turkey is, despite this peace process in Bakur and between Bakur and Turkey, we see that they are acting hostile towards Rojava in northeast Syria. They are using their factions and their military groups, which I call them terrorists because that's who they are. But they actually also recruited international jihadists to fight Rojava and the Kurdish people in Rojava. And recently, 2 days ago, we saw after Hakan Fidan, the Turkish foreign affairs minister, he was in Damascus, and right after that, it was clear that either it was a green light from Turkey or an order to attack this civilian areas in Sheikh Massoud and another neighborhood in Aleppo, which is Kurdish areas. And where Kurdish people lives. So the hostility towards SDF is obviously something that we are not surprised over, but we are surprised that the international community and the global powers are silent about the fact that Turkey is not allowing peace processes and negotiations in Turkey to develop in a positive direction. So Turkey continues military and political pressure on Rojava, demanding that SDF should lay down their weapons, which cannot obviously ever happen. And they are doing that both directly, but also through these proxies. But I think that real stability requires ending external, which Turkey is, external attacks, protecting self-determination and administration of Rojava, and ensuring and hoping that international community will guarantee Rojava's security and political status.
Thank you, Gino. That was very clear and to the point. The next question is about also the Middle East and the problems in the Middle East. As you see that the Turkey seeks to become an influential power in the Middle East, its relations with Hamas and its cooperation with jihadist organizations, including the Damascus government as well, are known very well now these days. The same applies to the Cyprus, where the Turkey occupies half of the island as well. So Turkey's plans and alliances are also a source of concern for the Israel as well. As you know, the Israel has a new role in the region right now. So what is your assessment of Turkey's regional policies?
Yes. So last year, when we were talking exactly 1 year ago, we were talking about that we are seeing right now at that time that Turkey wants this idea of that Turkey has no borders. We have heard that from Turkey themselves on both ministerial level and also official, but also diplomatic levels, that they don't believe that they have no borders. And exactly with last year, we saw how Turkey showed us what they want, with Turkish flags all over Syria, on the buildings, also historical buildings. And I think we should believe people when they show us what they really wanted to do, and that is to expand its regional influence through military intervention and pragmatic alliances, including that this has no borders. That they are willing to work with Islamist actors, that they are willing to even work with terrorists. And these policies obviously have increased regional tensions, weakened international law, and raised concerns among neighboring states and global actors, such as Israel, Cyprus, and Greece, which had these meetings yesterday, 2 days ago, actually, where they are committed to work together against this threat that Turkey is causing. And I think it's not something that only is a threat to the region and these countries I just mentioned. I think that it's something that Europe is threatened by, because it's just our neighbor. Turkey is a neighbor to Europe, and I think that also it's not in interest of Russia either. We see drones over Ankara without Turkey being aware of it, and the tensions are high. So Turkey's situation is, on the one hand, acting like this global power in the region. At the same time, it's caught between international pressure and former, or we don't know, present alliances and allies who are fighting Turkey. But what we know in the region, that if we are talking about the Kurd situation, all these actors, Turkey, Iran, Iraq, not so much Iraq though, but Syria will act against the Kurdish cause, and that is what is most important, that we should obviously have our focus on.
Thank you, Jino. As you know, the international representatives, such as like ECHR, European Union, United Nations, they are all silent about what's really happening in the Middle East, especially on the Palestinian issue as well. So the Turkey involves in that as well. So armed groups affiliated with the new Damascus government continue to carry out massacres against Druzes and Alevites communities in Syria. And just a day ago also, they have attacked to Sheikh Mahsud Street, which is basically the Kurds are based in there. So why do the communities subjected to these massacres, particularly the Kurds, with the 40 million population in the region, have no representation at the United Nations? And why United Nations or EU has no taking any action against all these massacres? Very shortly, that one, please.
Yes. Communities such as Kurds, Druze, and Alawites lack representation because the international system, even though they have a lot of charters that should have protected the minorities and nations, peoples, what they call it in the charter, prioritize state sovereignty over people's right. And that has been obvious for Kurds for many years. But the absence of Kurdish representation at the UN reflects long-term political exclusion rather than demographic reality. Obviously, besides the abounding of the Kurdish representation in UN, we can also criticize our own nation. As people, I believe that those leaders, Kurdish leaders who have power right now, can pursue this representation by mobilizing well an organization and investing in advocacy for Kurdish causes, which I believe is missed right now. For example, Palestinians. How come such a small group of people, which is a nation, have so much mobilization internationally? They are in all institutions and organs, and also represented in UN. I think that is interesting that they can, but the Kurdish people, the Kurdish people obviously can, but the Kurdish cause is not represented or invested by our own leaders.
Thank you. That was very clear and to the point as well. And that should follow the basically the situation about the Turkey peace process. So as you know, the Kurdish leader Abdullah Öcalan made a call on 27th February. That was a democracy call, and for the PKK to lie down the arms and move to the political struggle rather than the arms struggle. So how do you interpret this development? Do you support a democratic solution to this century-old conflict to end the war? And how important was the Öcalan's call?
Well, I think everybody should support any act of peace and development and democracy, which was Ocalan's call and PKK's decision to lay down arms is obviously also historical. It shows that the Kurdish people in Bakur, as people, one nation, that they are democratic and that they seek political solution, and that is possible within the Kurdish cause, and it deserves serious support by international and national also levels. I think that Ocalan and the PKK, by seeking these peace process, also has exposed the Turkish dilemma, which is, on the one hand, why have Turkey as a state ethnically cleansed Kurds in Bakur? Why has Turkey been so hostile against Kurds? They can't even say the word Kurd. Also their identity, the Turkish identity and policies are literally built on what Kurd is, so they are not Kurd, they are Turk. They are not democratic. They are authoritarians. They are nationalist. Kurds are not nationalist to Turkey, and so on and so on. And also the other problem, the second problem for Erdogan, his whole political situation is built on hostility towards Kurds. He has no plans for developing economic situation in Turkey, the climate crisis, the society problems, the developments in education, and other things that could develop the Turkish people and the land of Turkey. That has been exposed. So Turkey is right now in a dilemma. Oh, we talked about peace process, but we were not really serious about it. And I think that is being seriously exposed on the international stage, because we haven't seen any serious steps from Turkey. Rather, we have seen that PKK, in fact, are taking this really seriously, but we see hostility towards Kurds in Rojava, but also in Bakur. We've seen mayors being detained. We have seen Kurds being beaten up by authorities for simply saying that they are Kurd. We have seen women being arrested simply for protesting for their mayor that they elected, and so on and so on and so on. So I think that Turkey is being exposed on a political, but also in a cultural level.
As you mentioned, the Turkey's position, basically, I need to ask that. In that case, what is your message for the ongoing peace process in Turkey? Uh, would you like to give any message to Turkey? As you mentioned, the Turkish state side didn't take any steps forward yet in a positive way for to give wellness of the peace process. So don't you think this peace process will end up, at least on the Bakur side, the wars and losing lives? So for to be successful on this peace process, what is your call to Turkey?
Well, I have no call to Turkey. I have nothing to say to the Turkish state. To be honest with you, the hostility that we have seen towards people, Kurds, and being hypocritical, talking about the Palestinians' rights and their struggles, and then on the other side, bombing Kurds in Rojava and being hostile to the Kurdish people. So I have nothing to say. I don't even want to talk to them if they asked me to talk to them. But to the Turkish people, that's another story, because I really want to talk to them. And I think we also talked about this last year. They need to know that the Turkish people need to know that the Kurdish people are not their problem. Their problem is the Turkish state, and in the name of Turks and being Turk, and in the name of Turkey, Erdogan and the regime is taking the Turkish people to the wrong side of history. Because one thing is, we are not only 2 million people, we are 50 million people, and you cannot avoid us. We are a people who have been very steady, and we have survived many genocides. We have survived many military assimilation policies from Iran, Turkey, Iraq, Syria, and yet here we are again playing a key role in these developments. So I think that the Turkish people need to understand we are not their problem, and we are their friends, and together we can have a great future where we can coexist by learning about each other, by using democratic principles and practices to move forward, and not all the time war and bombing and being hostile towards each other. Like, we also in the region deserve the same democracies that we have in the West. Why are Turks different from that? Why are Kurds different from Europeans? Why can we not have the same things? And I believe that we can.
Thank you. To be successful on the peace, basically there is a huge role which can be played by the EU. And of course, as you witnessed until today, the EU has been always on the division side, like dividing and controlling strategy of the Europe. But from now on, how do you think the international community, especially the EU, should play a role in this historic peace and democracy process in Turkey? And also, this is related with the problems ongoing on in Rojava and around the Rojava as well. Why has the EU not taken any action on this issue? And why has not even formal call has been made to Turkey to stop bombing Rojava and continue to the peace process with the Kurds in a healthy manner?
I think actually that the European Union and US are both pressuring Turkey on this side, and I think that both actors are pressuring so much that is why that they are in that Turkey is in such a difficult position that they have put themselves in, obviously, and I think that. They are obviously forced to support the Kurdish steps because they have been legitimate, they have been aligned with the Western democracy thoughts and thinking. And I think that has been done under the table through diplomacy. But obviously, at the same time, we see that Turkey is allowed to have proxies in Syria and interrupting negotiation between Jolani Damascus and SDF, preventing them from developing and come to an agreement on March 10th agreement. But I think even though that those things are happening, I think we hear some new tones from European Union. Kaja Kallas, the chief of foreign affairs minister, mentioned those struggles very on a higher perspective and with some different words, but I could definitely hear that they see that Turkey is the problem here, and also that what struggles could be caused by having a former 3 times jihadist and terrorist. So I don't think that they are not doing anything. Are they doing enough? That's the question, and I don't believe so. But at the same time, on the ground with the SDF and the Kurdish people, they have all that they need, and they are supported on the ground, and they have high moral, and they are ready to whatever. Preparing, we've seen military preparation with the international coalition. We have seen military training on the ground. So it seems like on the both one hand, SDF is really well prepared and well supported, but on the political level and diplomatic level, that is not shown, which can be great, by the way. We don't need to show the world that who are supporting us, but we see other things on the ground.
Thank you, Jino. Is there anything I didn't ask? Anything you would like to add on very shortly, very briefly around our frame of the topics? Please have your last words.
Yes, on the last question, I obviously like European Union to take an actively step to support the peace process rather than US through political pressure, mediation, and conditional engagements. Kaja Kallas was talking about how Europe can be a force to support a building institution and so on. And I think that is a really great idea, and I think that is a great initiative that Europe can be that in Syria and in Rojava. Because we have experience in Europe and in European Union, how these institutions, for example, federalism, self-governance, and so on, we have experience within the European Union, how that can be successful. So I applaud that, and I hope that the European Union take necessary step towards that, which I think could be beneficial both for the Syrians, Arabs, troops, and allies, but also, of course, the Kurdish people and SDF.
Thank you so much, political analyst from Denmark, Jino Victoria Doabi. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for your valuable comments.
Thank you so much for having me.